Hey guys, is anyone there? How are you? I thought I would try something a little different today. Being that I am a new Facebook Live broadcaster, this is only the second day that I've actually had the ability to do this live on Facebook. I've been trying to think of ways to use this. Being that I'm primarily a writer, I thought, hey, what better way for me to actually, to share the stuff that I'm doing than to actually do a live reading with you. So, if you're familiar with some of my stuff, I tend to either write really short pieces, is typically like poetry, or really, really long pieces. And I totally recognize that my longer pieces are quite often beyond most people's short attention span, at least for when you're scrolling through your feed at work or sitting on a bus or sitting at a stop sign, whatever. So I thought, hey, why don't I do some reading of my longer pieces? And today I happen to write a fairly longer piece. It's about 1,500 words. So to put that into perspective, 1,500 words is about maybe 8 minutes worth of reading. And most people have, no offense, most people have an attention span for about 8 seconds online. Which is why Vine is so popular, right? You got like 6 seconds and then the mind is off onto something else. But so this piece, I've started writing it yesterday, and I talked a little bit about it on a live broadcast that I did yesterday. But I finished writing it this morning, and I figured, hey, most people aren't going to be able to read it because they don't have time. So why don't I do a live reading? So that's what I'm going to do. You can find it. If you want, you can follow along. If you go to zenthinking.net, and click on the blog page, it'll be the most recent blog because I just published it a few hours ago. So now this is probably going to be kind of an out there topic for some of you, perhaps. But if you're following the Zen Thinking page, then maybe it isn't going to be that out there for you. I'll just get right to it. The piece is titled "The Illusion of Free Will: The Reason Why We Blame and Criticize Others." So I'm just going to dive right into it, you guys. The illusion of free will. So many people are addicted to blaming other people for their life's woes. The whole world is somehow at fault for their unhappy state of mind, and they accept no responsibility for their well-being whatsoever. They've resigned themselves to being nothing more than a helpless victim, one whose only avenue of expression is one of resistance, denial, and critique. Little do most people realize, however, that they are only a victim to their own ignorance, nothing more. You see, when someone places blame or makes judgments about another person, it bolsters their ego and falsely puffs them up, making them believe, "I'm better than you." It gives them a false sense of superiority, a very brief one, but nonetheless one that arises from the false perception of who they believe themselves to be. They reject the reality of the other person's human predicament, not realizing the shared essence of being which truly unites them. When we slander someone, we constrict ourselves into a tightened ball of resistance and self-delusion. It's a desperate attempt at psychologically dominating someone, a verbal act of aggression that comes entirely from a sense of personal lack and self-loathing. But when we are critical of another person, we only harm ourselves by strengthening our reliance on the false ego, which is the object of thought responsible for all suffering. So many people are habitual blamers. No matter what happens to them, it's always someone else's fault. We need to realize that this crass behavior exists only because of the unhappiness they feel inside of their own selfishness. It's a terribly lonely place to be, thinking that you are all alone in your own self-centered world, and that everything happens to you rather than through you. Blamers and bullies are truly hurting inside. It's the only reason why they lash out at the world. They're lost inside of themselves. They have no idea of their true self-nature. So they lash out like a wild animal, trapped inside a cage. Once we recognize this as truth, then we owe these bullies and aggressors our compassion rather than reacting to their harsh criticism in a similar like fashion. If we remain unwilling to awaken to the truth of our interdependent co-arising, our mutual interbeing, then we will continue to only focus on the illusion of separation that we believe exists between all of us. And so, if I place blame on you for something you have done to me, it's caused by nothing other than my misperceived belief that my personal self is separate and better from yours. But no person is an island unto themselves. Any division that appears to exist between us exists only within mind. You are not independent from that which has conditioned you. You, your physical body-mind, not your true self, is a product of circumstance and environment. No one is truly responsible for anything all on their own. That would be like saying a lake is independent from the river that feeds it, or that a tree is independent from the soil from which it grew. The thoughts you think and the actions you take are entirely predetermined by that which has shaped you, which is all things that have come before. In other words, there is no free will. So if free will doesn't actually exist, then what sense is there in attempting to place blame on someone? In the dream world in which that person resides, in which they were conditioned by, they had no other choice. This is their reality, no matter how delusional it might be. As long as a person is lost within the dream of unconsciousness, then their actions will appear to be mindless, when in fact, their behaviors are caused entirely by mind and its self-created self, and of course, the ego that it so desperately defends. So to assert that free will exists is to imply that there is a doer who does all of our actions. But there is no I that exists within us to assume such a role. I is only a thought. There is no self to blame. There is no doer. There is no independent entity other than the body-mind organism. But we are not our minds. We are not our minds. No matter how convincing the freedom of choice appears to be, our thoughts and actions arise spontaneously from nowhere. You cannot control the thoughts that appear to you. They arise all on their own. We, our aware presence of being, is only the witness to our thoughts. We don't own them, nor do we create them. They just appear. Likewise with our body and its multiplicity of simultaneous behaviors, we have no control over what it does, or when, despite the very convincing illusion that we do. At all times, we are under the control of whatever delusions we currently believe in. We are a puppet tied to the strings of our own unconscious projections. Such is our so-called fate, our karma, our life's dharma that we are to learn from and overcome. Our behaviors and actions are always aligned with our present level of awareness and consciousness. So, if we remain asleep in of the madness that the mind creates for us, we have unknowingly been sleepwalking through delusional thinking we formerly assumed to be true. We become wise to our own delusions. We awaken to our true self, our inner awareness, who is witness to the lack of free will of the body-mind. To awaken from the dream of life is to blissfully abide in the awareness that perceives it. No longer be hypnotized by the drama of life's game and its false appearances. Rather than being so emotionally involved, peacefully observe it unfold, unattached to its outcomes. When you realize that free will doesn't actually exist, that it is an illusion of mind, any burden of blame that you've been holding on to is lifted entirely, leaving you with a lighter, happier, and freer presence of being, one that is accepting of whatever the present moment contains. See your conditioning and be free from it. Realize that yourself is the same as everyone else's, and that in truth, there is no one to blame. There is no doer. There is nothing done to no one. There is only the perfection of the non-dual reality. We, our human persons, are all at the mercy of our mutual circumstances, each of us destined to follow whatever path has been placed before us. Meanwhile, our true self, our aware presence, just peacefully observes. The thing is, we've been the witness all along. We just merely assumed we had control, when in actuality, we were simply walking the only path available to us. In truth, we are not unlike a rat in a maze who believes it has the freedom to turn either left or right. However, we know otherwise. There really is no choice at all. When you know your true self as the universal consciousness that flows through all appearances, you realize there is no blame to be made. Any criticism, slander, or judgment that you cast on to another person is only a sad reflection from the unhappy, false ego. It is not reality. It has nothing to do with the true self, the aware self we all share. So be easy on yourself, and on others too. Know that at all times you've done the best that your present skills and abilities allowed, which is the same for everyone else as well, no matter how dire, no matter how vile their behaviors or actions might seem. You are the absolute awareness through which every experience becomes known. Realize that you are not that which you perceive. You are the essence of perceiving, observing the cosmic joke of consciousness as it plays out before you. And that's the fresh new piece. You can see why I might have wanted to read that to you, because most people probably don't have the patience to watch to read a 10-minute piece on their phone or laptop. So I do appreciate you guys swinging by. It's really cool that you're checking this out. I'm just seeing some comments now here. Does that make sense? Do you guys have any questions on that? I know it's, it goes against so much of what we have been led to believe our entire life. Everyone believes that we have free will. But what we fail to consider is the conditioning of our entire life, how we've been groomed by family, by circumstance, by language, by nurturing, by lack of nurturing, by the neighborhood we grew up in, by the social status, by the education we received. Everything conditions us, all which created a certain path for us to take. And if we were to unravel all of the different threads that make up all of the decisions in our life, it will be very abundantly clear that in every given moment, it really was predestined for us. I'm not saying there was a hand that was shaping all of this for us. I'm just saying that we're carving the future path for ourselves at every given moment based on our current skill set, which again is not our own doing. We inherited that largely through the accident of birth, but of course also through through whatever talents we might naturally have or otherwise. So again, when we recognize that every moment everyone really is doing the best that they can, no matter how abundantly awful somebody's best might be, it really, again, it makes us realize that there is no blame to be made. We can't blame a person. We need to, if there's going to be any blame, it's going to be the entire culture that allowed that person to become what they are. Now, the non-duality perspective within all of this is realizing, again, what I was talking about, how there is, in order for us to place blame on someone, we have to believe that there is a doer of said action. But in non-duality, there is no self. There is no self in here. Yes, there's a person, there's a body, and there's a mind, but there is no entity called, that is an independent entity, a self within any of us. If we were to reflect on our own true nature, we'll realize that we are not the self that we believe ourselves to be. We are an aware presence that perceives our thoughts of ourself. But really, our true self is an aware presence. It is empty of any characteristic. It is just aware. So how can a presence of awareness be at blame? Because a presence of awareness isn't a self. It's not a someone. It's a no one. There's no body there. So we have the appearance that there is someone to blame. But a mind, again, is spontaneous. What a mind does, we really have no control over. There's the illusion of control, but there really is none. Now, have you ever noticed, for example, how you still think of things when you're not even thinking? Let me repeat that. Have you ever noticed how you still think of things when you're not thinking? And this is one of the realizations that you have when you meditate or you contemplate, when you're not distracted away from yourself. You realize that the mind is continually thinking on its own. You have no control over it. Not at first. You can develop some type of control, but that is a practice. That's a skill. Naturally, the mind just spits things out. Now, in terms also with the body, and this is again why we have to realize that we are not our mind. because we can't control it. It just does what it does. We have an illusion of control, but there really isn't any. Likewise with our body. I'm sitting here talking to you right now, and I really have no idea what's coming out of my mouth. It's just coming out. I'm not in control. To a certain degree, I can stop talking if I realize it, if I need to. But for the most part, our body does things independently of thought. So we are not our body, we are not our mind, we are the aware presence that perceives both. And in such a way, that's why it makes no sense to cast blame or to criticize other people. Because, when someone is doing unpleasant behaviors to themselves or to the rest of the world that might even impact on you, they are existing purely in a state of unconsciousness. Now, clearly in the real world they are conscious, but they are unconscious to the role that they're playing in the reality that it's creating for them. They are unconscious to the dream of life as their mind is projecting onto their perceptions. And that's why they're like a rat in a maze. Their mind has already made up their path for them. They aren't in control. Their true self, is the aware presence that's just along for the ride in the body-mind mechanism. So when we can, come to terms and really grok what our true self is, we gain a whole aura of compassion, not only for ourselves, we become kinder to ourselves, but we become kinder to everyone around us and everything. Because we realize that really there is no one to blame. Everyone's running around with this madness mind that's doing its own craziness. And, we're all on a different journey. We're all at different stages of spiritual development. Some are conscious, some are completely unconscious, some are in between. And until you can awaken to what's happening within the body, especially the mind, you can't distance yourself from the control that your mind is exerting within your life. And that's why mindfulness is so powerful, is because you start to observe these processes of mind. And even in the midst of, let's say you're talking with someone and all of a sudden you catch yourself saying something. It's like, oh my God, I totally didn't mean to say that. That's because you really aren't in control. But mindfulness observes that and it can catch it. And if you're quick on it, you can actually, make an apology saying, hey, I don't know where that came from. I'm sorry. And we all know this, right? I mean, we've all said things. It's like, I don't know, especially in the heat of the moment. You just say something. It's like, I don't know where that came from. I'm sorry. But where it came from was the ego. And the ego, again, is just another false thought. The ego doesn't exist. It's a thought that you've given the power of belief to, which then manifests into this self that you believe is who you are, and that you believe everyone else has something similar. But it's all just a mess of consciousness that we've taken to be true. Anyway, you guys, I wasn't even planning on this being that long. I just wanted to quickly read you a piece because I realized that, again, I know most people don't have time to read these long pieces that I'm pumping out. If you guys want to hear me if you like that reading, I don't know if you enjoyed that or not. That's essentially what I do every week on my podcast, is I read all of my recent work and I riff on it, kind of like what I did just here. But that's an audio only thing. This whole new Facebook Live thing is opening up a whole new platform for me to experiment with. So let me know what you think. If you dig it, I will possibly continue. I'm kind of having fun doing it. I think it'd be kind of cool to, read you each piece that I write each day shortly after finishing it. Just another way to kind of personalize what I'm doing here. I don't want to just be a faceless page name on Facebook. There is somebody here. Actually, no, there isn't. Right? If you're listening, there's nobody here. There's just an aware presence occupying a body-mind that happens to have a name. That's it for now, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. I realize there's a bunch of people that have just joined, but luckily there's a replay button. So if you missed the first little bit, press play again. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. And I'll talk to you again very soon. Hey, I would love to do maybe a Q&A with you guys sometime. So maybe I can start another thread just with some potential topics that you might want to chat about or have me riff on. Anyway, thanks so much. Hope you guys have a great day. Much love. Brian and Zen Thinking out.